Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Touchdown Wire matchup preview podcast. Myself, Doug Farrar, the editor of Touchdown Wire, and Mark Schofield, our 5-tool guy. Mark, it's conference championship time.
It is conference championship time. I think we got two pretty good games.
Yeah, I got a stat for you. The top 4 passing offenses in DVOA since week 10. Number 1, Packers. Number 2, Bucs. Number 3, Bills. Number 4, Chiefs.
Yeah, it's funny how that works out.
Up in Seattle, we just want to run the ball more.
Yeah, because that's what helps in 2021.
Yeah, okay. So speaking of 2021, before we get into the games, I wanted to, I know you did a thing about whether Philip Rivers, who retired this week, is a Hall of Famer. I don't think there's any question. I think if you, like the best part of his career, AJ Smith, who was the Chargers GM, was like actively pissing everyone off and trying to demolish the rosters. So my question, is he a Hall of Famer? And secondly, a guy who stands in the pocket and is tough in the pocket, really doesn't have any second reaction ability, almost a Drew Bledsoe to a point. Is he the last of his kind? So those are my 2 questions about Philip Rivers for you.
Yeah, and I wrote briefly this week that I think he's the Hall of Famer. And I know a lot of people
throw that question out. He's a Hall of Famer and shut up. Let's move on.
Yeah. I mean, is he the last of his kind? I still think, and you know this too, you've written about this a lot. Football is so cyclical, and it seems like right now he would be the last of his kind, a dying breed, a dinosaur, the battleship kind of quarterback that can't get out of his own way. As we're moving to guys like Kyler Murray and Trevor Lawrence, who's obviously mobile, all 4 of the top quarterbacks in this class are really mobile. So you're going to see the athleticism. I still think in the back of my mind, though, you'll see that swing back. You'll see the pendulum swing because the Belichick's, the smarter defensive minds will start getting big and tough. If all these defenses now are going to really sort of get light, get fast, get small, start running 21 personnel. Belichick's shown that already. Shanahan, others, they'll start beating you up front. So the pendulum will swing back. So I don't think he's the last of his kind, but he's going to be the last I think we'll see for a while. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to someone whose opinion I really respect about Kyle Trask this week, and one thing this person said was, well, he has trouble moving in a kind of a second reaction way effectively.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's a death sentence in today's NFL. I just don't, not because I haven't really studied Kyle Trask yet, so I can't back that up and say, oh yes, I believe this is true. But if that's the case, then he's got a real set of problems.
I think that's why
in today's NFL, if you don't have second reaction ability, I think you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, and I think that's why Kyle Trask slides to the second day of the draft. I know there are people that said, look, he might sneak into the first round. I don't see it. And I will second that person you talked to's sort of quick evaluation of him, which is if there's a question mark on him, it's certainly that athleticism. Like he's more of a Rivers than a Murray, more of a, Bledsoe than a Lawrence. And so that's why he's going to slide. And will it be a deep slide into day 3? I don't think so, because quarterbacks always get pushed up boards anyway.
And all it takes is one.
It takes one team.
I can fix him.
And
famous last words always.
Yeah,
quarterbacks.
We know Dr. Fix-It is the thing that kills so many teams when they make quarterback decisions.
You might as well say, I'm about to get fired, right?
Yeah.
After you say, I can fix this guy, someone's going to do it with Wentz, and they're going to get fired.
Yes.
I can fix the quarterback, merges seamlessly into I'm going to get fired. So There you go. Little hot tip for you future quarterback developers out there.
Right.
Good boy. Speaking of, again, I just want to touch on a couple of things before we get into the games. We got a lot to unpack here. The rundown is large. Lamar and Goff, 2 quarterbacks, a lot of question marks. And you and I have both written about, I've written about Goff. I'm probably 10 times less impressed with Goff than you are. Lamar, I'm still on the fence. I think with Lamar, his ultimate upside is what Vic became in Philadelphia, but Vic was a much better passer. And with Goff, there are 2 kinds of quarterbacks who scare me to death. There's the one who absolutely needs everything to be perfect before he can, produce at a viable rate. And that's Goff. It's Garoppolo. I'm starting to think it's Wentz. These guys who, if any one part of it, if any of the blocks in the tower, you pull one block and the whole thing goes, I don't want that guy. And with Lamar, and I'm not in his head, I don't want to say this is empirically true, but it feels like with what they have him doing, he's so confident in the run game and his ability to run. That guy scares the crap out of me too. So where do you stand with these two guys who, Sean McVay, I've never heard him sound so non-committal about Goff. And with Jackson, it's not just, well, can they win a more than one playoff game with him? They're going to have to give him like, $75 bazillion in the next year or so. So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts initially off the top of my head are those two organizations would love to switch those two quarterbacks because I think Sean McVay wants a quarterback.
Oh, that's mobility. An interesting construct. Okay.
Sean McVay wants a quarterback with mobility. I mean, you saw the Wildcat Cam Akers stuff against the Packers. That's the reason he went with John Wolford. He's looking at today's game and says, I've got a Rivers-esque quarterback in Goff who's not exactly mobile. His mobility is Brady style, which is I can create with my feet, create space with my feet. So he wants a mobile quarterback. And in Baltimore, they want a quarterback who's just going to check the boxes, follow the recipe on a given play. Because what Lamar's doing right now, you saw that early in that game against Buffalo. If that first read or if that first two quick looks were not there, his thought is, I'm just a better athlete right now. So I'm going to run around and either take off or create time with my legs. And he's not checking the boxes. So I think both of those organizations, if you could flip those two QBs right now, they'd be happy with what they've got on offense. And that's not to say that Lamar's a bad quarterback.
No,
but I think that those organizations want something else at that position right now.
I think you're dealing with two guys who are very hit and miss throwers. I think they struggle with what they see. I think if things aren't schemed, exponentially well for either one of them, Lamar just happens to be the most dynamic athlete at that position since Michael Vick. So there's your advantage. I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting thought. I don't know how McVay would deal with Lamar's reading ability, to put it bluntly. But maybe in that offense, he's got slightly better targets. Maybe it works differently. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, you saw it too Saturday night. Like the third or fourth play of that game, you could tell that Lamar is just like, no, I don't like what I'm seeing downfield. And a lot of people are saying that, look, the fix is Kenny Golladay. The fix is Allen Robinson in Baltimore with Lamar. And while that might help, I think the other thing is he needs to rely less on his athleticism and more on his arm. And that's not happening right now.
Because I don't think the fix is firing Greg Roman. He had a lot of open shots that he just, and this has been true all season.
You talked about it like mid-year.
I wrote an in-depth piece on Lamar right after he said that Roman's offense was too predictable. And I'm like, okay, because I've been, beating the Mike McCarthy thing to death since like 2013. So I'm more than willing to blame a coach if it's the coach's fault that the passing offense sucks and it's only Aaron Rodgers that keeps this guy out of the fire. I'm perfectly willing to say that. I just don't think it's Greg Roman's fault. I think they're schemed open shots, and I think Lamar didn't see him. And I've talked to a lot of people who are pretty highly connected and know more about this stuff than I do, and we're kind of all in agreement. Like this is on Lamar at this point.
Yeah.
With Goff, I just think the ceiling is right above his head.
Yeah.
I don't know where to go with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I think McVay just wants more athleticism. I'm on a whole host of other things with Goff right now, and he's not getting it. The money, though, I don't know his exact contract situation, but it's not great in terms of trying to get out from under it.
They can't get out from under it until 2022.
So there you go.
There you go. Onto the games. Four pretty good quarterbacks. Buccaneers at Packers. The Brady and Rodgers guys, they're decent.
They're pretty good.
Having said that, let's start with Green Bay's defense because we haven't talked about this a lot. We didn't talk about it in the divisional round podcast because it's Jared Goff and who cares. Jair Alexander against the Rams allowed -3 yards in coverage. Per Pro Football Focus, it's the only time a defender has allowed negative yardage with at least 30 coverage snaps in a game since 2006, which is as far back as PFF's charting goes at this point. Week 6 against the Buccaneers, he gave up 2 catches on 4 targets for 27 yards. Packers defense has improved in the second half of the season. They've gone from 22nd to 12th in total defensive DVOA, from 19th to 10th against the pass, which is more important than the run because you don't really run. Although I think Ronald Jones is better than people think he is. But this Buccaneers offense is also a different beast. They've gone from different beast. They've gone from 11th to 2nd in total DVOA, 13th to 2nd in passing DVOA, 14th to 5th in rushing DVOA, even though they don't run a lot. Since week 10, Green Bay and Tampa Bay have the NFL's 2 best offenses in passing DVOA. And they're kind of mirror images of each other. Although the Buccaneers don't run, both Brady and Rodgers are tremendously effective out of 12 personnel, especially in the second half of the season, especially as Tampa Bay's offenses kind of come together. Yep. I was asking Bruce Arians yesterday on the Buccaneers Zoom availability, like, how often do you get together with Tom Brady, and, you know, how does Brady say this and you say that? And he said, we do it all the time. Byron Leftwich is a big part of it. I think when you look at the motion numbers and the play action numbers and just how much more diverse they are pre-snap, I think it's Brady saying to Arians, look, and there have been, you know, intimations to the effect that Brady's allowed to quote unquote coach in Tampa Bay like he never was in New England. So you could infer that maybe he's calling more of the shots, but, you know, we talk so much about Green Bay's passing offense, the number 1 scoring offense. These are 2 very similarly constructed offenses in the passing game. Now, in the run game, it's a completely different monster, and we'll get to that in a minute. But from the passing game, it's pretty close.
Yeah, it's very close. I think, you know, Green Bay's done it all year, thrown out of heavier personnel groups. I mean, whether it's 12, whether it's 22, LaFleur's done a really good job at that. He's done a really good job at getting, you know, Tonyan involved in the passing game. We've talked a lot about LaFleur as a play caller. And then to Tampa Bay, the way they sort of figured it out down the stretch with the 12 personnel, doing some different stuff. And it's weird. It's like this weird, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, the vertical / mesh, the stuff that they're doing is super fun.
Is running mesh. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. It was a stunner. It was just an absolute stunner.
It's a new day in America.
I do not recognize this. You know, I think they're similar quarterbacks in a sense. You know, I mean, obviously Rodgers is more mobile, but they're guys that can, for the most part, beat you with their mind. You know, talk about the Rodgers smile. Like, both of these guys know most of the time.
I was actually wrong on that. It wasn't that play. It wasn't the Lazard. I got that wrong. So,
yeah, but still, I mean, Rodgers was,
you know,
what's the Tyra Banks smile with your eyes?
Yeah.
My wife used to watch Next Top Model. So, you know, he was smizing at that moment.
My wife watched it. Okay, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I admit. Okay. No, I mean, I think these are similar quarterbacks in a sense that they can carve you up with their mind before they carve you up with their arm. You know, Brady has some throws that he probably shouldn't make right now. The deep out route, you know, time into the boundary, that's a tougher, you know, shot for him to hit. But these are 2 really good quarterbacks. And I think these defenses will have their hands full with what these offenses can do in the passing game this week.
So tell me, per the article you wrote, because we switched conferences, I went to Mark on Monday and said, because I had done the NFC, we've done 30 all 22 pieces in the last 3 weeks.
It's a lot.
And I said to Mark, I don't think I can write about Packers Buccaneers anymore. Can we switch conferences? So you had NFC. Tell me, per the article you wrote, why cover 3 is Green Bay's big problem against Brady.
Well, I think it's twofold. I think one, and we've talked about this idea previously on different weeks, you know, if you drop into zone coverage, spot drop into coverages against these guys, you're going to get carved up. And Brady, particularly against cover 3, has been deadly throughout his entire career, because one of the weaknesses in cover 3, as you all know, with that single safety in the middle of the field, are those seam routes. And Brady, you know, other than perhaps Drew Brees, has been the best that I've seen at throwing those. And then the other thing is just, you know, charting it out. Green Bay's given up 41 passing plays this year, according to my chart, and of gains of 20 yards or more. 18 of those came when they were in cover 3. So they've had some struggles with it. They've had some struggles with cover 3. You know, and it's one of those things where, you know, if you're in cover 3, you just don't look to where Jair Alexander is. You know, that DVOA number you highlighted from the divisional round is ridiculous. You can run mirrored concepts. You can run floods. You can run verts. You can run Haas juke, which we all know is a Brady staple. I haven't seen a ton of that from Tampa Bay this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the game plan Sunday.
I think you're very disappointed when there isn't Haas Juke.
Look, I mean, I have the Scrubs auto retweet of the gifts, and I think I need to have a Haas Juke auto retweet rule as well whenever that's mentioned on Twitter. But I think that if you're looking at ways to construct a game plan from Brian Leftowich's perspective, from Bruce Arians' perspective, you want to have some stuff for the game plan to attack cover 3, because Green Bay's been vulnerable on it this year.
I will add that, and I brought up because we talked about this last week, Packers and Rams. The one way to take Devontae Adams out of a game is to give him too high.
Yeah.
2 safety coverage, and this doesn't include the last game because this was from last week's divisional round preview. The regular season against 2 safety coverage, which is cover 2, 2-man, cover 4, cover 6, Tampa 2. Adams has 18 catches on 27 targets for 223 yards, 51 yards after the catch, and 1 touchdown. Against single high, cover 1, cover 3, we'll say combo just for the hell of it. He has 72 catches on 95 targets for 970 yards, 576 yards after the catch, and 14 touchdowns. I would say there's a somewhat of a disparity. Now I'm looking at Tampa's too high numbers. 242 attempts. Only the Raiders have more too high. They've allowed 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I'm going to go to single high and see what that looks like. Come on. Hamster on the wheel. Dun,
Yep.
dun, dun, dun. Hold music. Buccaneers. They've given up 20 touchdowns to 7 interceptions in single high. So the vulnerabilities go both ways.
Yeah.
This is per Sports Info Solutions, by the way, whose database is the best. Okay, so yeah, that's so the difference between these 2 offenses is obviously the run game. And I've said Ronald Jones, I think, is better than people think, but this is a team that ran 5 times in one game once this season. So, and there's that inside zone or duo meme. Is it inside zone or duo? And Geoff Schwartz is the best with that. And what we've discovered is that the Packers don't care because they'll just kick your ass either way, zone or duo. Against I was watching NFL Turning Point, which outside of NFL Matchup is the best NFL show. 21 of the Packers' 36 rushing attempts in the divisional round were between the guards, 152 yards and 9 first downs. In the regular season, the Packers ran duo on 45 attempts, led the league with 6.7 yards per carry. Inside zone, they had 84 attempts in the regular season, the league tied best, 5.7 yards per carry, 11 total touchdowns out of inside zone and duo. Buccaneers, by the way, are tied with the Packers, 5.7 yards per carry out of inside zone. So Geoff Schwartz, former NFL offensive lineman, now a Twitter celebrity. We love this guy. You're going to see both inside zone and duo. So here's how Geoff explained the difference. Inside zone is a zone run scheme where the offensive linemen all step in the direction of the run play with double teams that are vertical and horizontal. The running back is at an angle chasing the butt of the center, which might be described differently depending on the offense. An inside zone can be a run to the tight end or not, and it's most often successful when the running back finds his way to the backside A gap. Duo is a gap scheme run and also is often called power without a puller. It's a downhill run with offensive linemen moving vertical up the field, attempting to build in as many double teams as possible. The running back is downhill on the front side A gap. Duo is run exclusively to the tight end, so you can start building your double teams with him. The running back finds most success running this play to the call side, but he can hit backside for success if it presents itself. So those are the differences. But the Packers don't care. They'll kick your ass to the inside zone. They'll kick your ass with duo. And here's where things get interesting, because the Packers, and Sid Gilman used to say, we create big passing plays out of the run game. Everyone went, huh? Well, that's exactly what Matt LaFleur is doing.
Right.
Very Sid Gilman of them. Against the Rams, Aaron Rodgers had the deep incompletion to Allen Lazard, who dropped the ball out of 12 personnel with the Rams safeties cheating up out of a run look out of single high. They were too high, and then they spun. Lazard drops the ball. That's a touchdown. Matt LaFleur tells Rodgers they have to go back to the play and get it when the Rams went back to their quarters coverage, which they do a ton. And what have we said about quarters coverage? We said this last week. When your safety's bet on the run, it's cover 0. Literally.
Yep.
Boom, 58-yard touchdown pass to Lazard. And you have to pay attention to the run fake when the Packers are in 12 personnel. Per Sharp Football Stats, hi Warren, Green Bay ran the ball on 57% of their plays in 12 personnel in the regular season. 122 attempts, 5.6 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. Now, I went back and looked at the week 6 game where the Buccaneers just demolished Aaron Rodgers in every way possible, and we have a lot to talk about there. When the Bucs were waxing him all over the field, Rodgers threw just twice out of 12 personnel. Completed 1 pass for 13 yards, quick slant to Davante Adams against man coverage in which both Devin White and Levante David flowed to the run strength. So we're going to talk about quick game against the blitz, but big passing plays out of 12, I think could be because obviously the Packers have to go into a different offensive game plan. If Todd Bowles just recreates his entire playbook, who would blame him?
Right.
But the big passing play out of heavy personnel, you're going to see both offenses attempt to get those, and both offenses have been extremely successful.
Yeah, and to go back to those coverage numbers you just rattled off for the Buccaneers, they've given up 20 touchdowns and 7 interceptions in single high.
Single high.
And
seven touchdowns and 6 interceptions and 6 dropped interceptions in 2 high. So they're a 2 high team.
Yeah, but if you're coming out and running 12 at that, you're going to force them to get out of 2 high. Otherwise, you're going to run the ball down their throats.
Not so fast, Dr. Schofield, because that might be a thing.
A thing.
The counter issue for the Packers in this regard. Defensive tackle Vita Vea has been out since week 5 with a broken leg. That may be one reason Todd Bowles was so aggressive against the Packers in week 6, because he's like, oh, crap, my 500-pound run-stopping guy is gone. Now I got to get, different. Vea is estimated to be back for this game, 100%, 50%, I don't know. But how good is he against the run? This season, when Vea is on the field, the Bucs allowed 2.8 yards per carry. Without him, 4.0. They were still good. But they weren't they were the best run defense in the NFL when Vea was there. Without Vea, Tampa Bay allowed a rushing EPA of minus 0.17. With him, rushing EPA of minus 0.32. So maybe Tampa Bay doesn't have to cheat anybody up to stop the run. If they can not have White and David flow to the run strength like they did on that 12 personnel play action pass to Davante Adams, then Rodgers and LaFleur have to go, okay, what next? What's plan B? Because the other thing about this game, Davante Adams said it at some point in the last few weeks, we didn't really have a plan B against the blitzes, against the Buccaneers. We didn't have a plan B. So I assume plan B is quick game.
Yeah.
And just a really, a Drew Brees spray chart. But Rodgers has taken, this is per Pro Football Focus, Rodgers has taken 4 sacks this year when blitzed. 3 of them came in that Tampa Bay game. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean,
but the Via Vea thing,
I think that's the bigger thing.
Major part.
Yeah. I mean, because if they can stop the run while staying at 2 high, that takes away Adams. That's where they want to be. I mean, that's their dream sort of scenario. So it might come down to just if they can go, and if so, how effective he's going to be on that leg.
Yeah, and historically, through the season against 2 high, it's been MVS and it's been Tanyan. Those have been the guys. And because obviously if you're 2 high and you're playing against the best receiver in football and Davante Adams, you're going to double him. That's double one. Boom, all day. So that's why Rodgers is going to go somewhere else, because he got single, and 4 guys on Davante Adams. Well, I love my guy, but I'm Aaron Rodgers. I'm not stupid. I'm going to throw to the open guy.
Right.
So let's go to the Todd Bowles game plan against the Packers in week 6. You've written about it. I've written about it. I thought it was the best defensive game plan I've seen all season. Pressure tied to coverage. Rodgers has been blitzed per Pro Football Focus 185 times this season, only 4 sacks. 3 of those sacks came in the loss to the Bucs. Rodgers has not been sacked on a blitz since week 6. Now, what's the difference? Quick game. The offense is more integrated as far as you're not going to blitz when you have to worry about the run. So that's a big deal. So I'll say this. I think, the extent to which Vita Vea can play at the level he was playing at when he was, stopping the run, and by the way, catching a touchdown pass, that could be a 340-pound defensive tackle is not often thought of as a game changer. I think he could be. I think that's
there's a butterfly effect off of
there really
that.
is, because then White and David are staying in their gaps, they're moving around, and all that. Speaking of pressure, you wrote a piece on sim pressure against Brady, and I'll just mention that Zadaria Smith could be huge for this because Preston Smith is good. We've said, Kenny Clark, double him, single everyone else because he's really awesome. But Zadaria Smith reminds me a lot of Michael Bennett, and you can remember that game where he had 3.5 sacks against the Vikings, and every sack was from a different gap.
Yep.
He's very much like Michael Bennett. You can line him up everywhere. Alex Kappa out, Ali Marpet in, fortunately for Tom Brady. But talk about sim pressure against the Bucs and how a guy like Zadarius, who is your movable chess piece on the line, and from linebacker, he can get a sack from off ball too. So how does that all work out?
Yeah, and the sim pressure piece came about because I figured, look, with a backup guard in place of Kappa with Steady, how are teams going to attack them? We all know the book on Brady is interior A-gap pressure. So I figured, look, it's going to be stunts, right? They're going to stunt, they're going to twist. Teams are going to do that against them. And when I went through and rewatched all of the sacks that Tampa Bay gave up this year, there weren't that many stunts at all. There was actually one against the Saints where they had Demario Davis in the A gap, Hendrickson out in a wide 9. Davis comes through the left shoulder of Ali Marpet, and then Hendrickson loops around. Marpet gets caught with his sort of head down. He can't see the looper, comes off it late, and you get the sack.
Demario Davis, by the way, in my mind, second to Devin White as an off-ball pressure linebacker.
Yeah. And no, when you want to talk about Smith, you want to talk about Smith this week with perhaps, what he can do in an off ball, what he can do in different gaps. There you're showing pressure with Davis walked up in the B gap between the guard and the tackle. That's something you might see, but he's really the cheese there because he's just occupying the guard and the tackle. It's Hendrickson looping around, which is the goal. So you might see Zadaria Smith doing stuff like that this week against Tampa Bay. But that was the first sack I looked at. I'm like, oh, this is great. But my theory is right. But then I go through the rest of their sacks. A lot of them really sim pressures. And, the definition I'm using for a sim pressure, because there are different generic definitions out there, when you show potentially 5, 6, or 7, but you really rush 4 and you come at them from different angles. And so what does that do? It sort of creates situations where you might have a slide to a guy that's dropping into coverage and an overload coming from the other side, and you just can't get it blocked up. Or there was a sack, I think it was against the Chiefs. JT O'Sullivan, former quarterback, the QB school on YouTube, does some great videos.
Great stuff.
He had one on how quarterbacks understand protection. He had this sort of rule of thought, which I think is brilliant. The goal of pass protection is to get as many double teams as you can. Well, the flip side goal to that for a defense should be get as many 1v1s as you can. And on one of the Chiefs impressions where they had the safety and the linebacker to 4-1-6 walked up, they both drop. You get a double on the interior, but then 3 1v1s and you win one of them. And other situations where, they're sliding protections, 2 guys that drop, and you get that sort of overload look or a bunch of 1-versus-1s on the backside, or you get guys dropping off to take away hot reads for Brady. New Orleans did that in week 1. And so when we've talked about the hot read situation for Brady that he's still sort of trying to learn, whether it's a shallow crosser or more vertical release, if you can show pressure, then drop, take away hot reads, take away where Brady wants to go quickly, that's another thing that you can do to sort of trip them up. And that's worked this year against them. And sort of tie Zadaria Smith into that, move him around, have him be the cheese on a lot of these where you're sliding protection towards him because you're worried about him, then drop him off and create those 1v1s. You don't have to do stunts. You can tie those in too. The Giants had a great example. Patrick Graham has been nasty this year, but they had a sub package, all this pressure looks, and they looped Leonard Williams all the way around. It was a ridiculous sack. But those are ways I think Green Bay can scheme up some pressure on Tom Brady, take away what he wants to do, take away some of those quick throws and hot reads, and get after him a bit to make him uncomfortable on Sunday.
Guess how many total pressures the Packers linebackers have this year? I'm going to give you a hint. Ed Rooney.
And 9?
9. They've pressured 9 times. That's it.
9.
Wow. Pressures from Green Bay. Christian Kirk.
Also, first of all,
Chris Barnes has 4. Kamal Martin has 3. I mean, we know that the Packers linebackers are a big box of fruit, but yeah.
By the way, incredible Ferris Bueller reference right there.
Thank you.
That was well
Off
done.
the top of my head at 7:30 in the morning Pacific time. Boom.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just glad. I'm honestly, I'm kind of stunned that I recalled that too.
I know, right? Well,
Yeah.
We're all guys talking football.
There we go.
So yeah, I guess my question there is if the Buccaneers know that the Packers linebackers are a big box of fruit, I mean, does it help the linebackers to have the same pressure, or does it just negate?
I think it helps them.
Mario Davis or White and White especially, but both White and David against the Packers in Week 6 just demolished the Packers protections with all kinds of pressure, both simulated and not. And I will say they did as Aaron Rodgers said, the word he used against the Rams for his line was stellar, but they have not picked up protections well at all season against multifaceted fronts. So, Packers defense is kind of middle of the pack. The linebackers, as far as pressure, as far as coverage, I mean, yikes.
I think the sim pressure stuff helps them because, with 9 pressures to their credit this year, they clearly not created it. So you have to manufacture it. And this is a way I think you can do it by creating some overload situations, creating some moments when you get an advantageous one-on-one. Maybe they do have to do some stunt stuff as well. Where you're going to use Zadaria Smith as the initial penetrating guy, then loop somebody around behind him to get a crease that you can take advantage of. It's going to be tough. And what Tampa Bay is going to want to do. They're going to protect inside out. Stiddy was good enough. But when you've got Jensen, who won a lot of these, I will say, he would be the guy that would see the overload situation and then fight like hell, to get out to the right tackle to try to help somebody. And he's an incredibly good center.
Who was the guy he just demolished? You feel bad for the guy's entire family.
That was the Washington game, right? Because you tweeted that out where he forklifted a dude into the cheap seats.
He threw him. He threw a guy. He just thunk. Yeah. Hold on 1 second. I got one thing.
Oh boy.
Let's just do this real quick.
9 times. 9 times.
Okay.
9 times. 9 times.
That's how many times Green Bay's linebackers have pressured opposing quarterbacks.
I think you got to name this show the Ferris Bueller podcast.
9 times. 9 times.
Okay, moving on.
Man, as a kid growing up in the 80s that loved computers, that movie was right up my alley.
There you go. Okay, so after 9 times. So I insisted this is the Doug is an idiot portion of the program. I insisted that Todd Bowles had to use Devin White as a blitzer and nothing else against the Saints. I will say White's interior blitz was a catalyst for Breeze's interception to Sean Murphy-Bunting because it forced Breeze off his spot, and that wasn't great for Breeze. But in 3 games against the Saints this season, White has no pressures of any kind. 0-0-0. Sacks, hits, hurries. Pretty weird for the NFL's best off-ball blitzer. And I would call that at least a pressure. So maybe, PFF, maybe go back and look at that one. White also had that pick off a really bad Breeze throw to Kamara. At that point, I'm like, can we just take him out and reverse the game and make this never happen? But against the Packers in Week 6, White got a sack and 3 pressures, and Bulls lined him up all over the place. So we'll see. But White also became the first player ever to have at least 10 tackles, an interception, and a fumble recovery in his first playoff game. So that's me not knowing what the hell I'm talking about. Just wanted to end it there.
We all take our L's.
I would expect, I would be surprised because they did all, it was, it was sim pressure in the A gaps. It was bare fronts with White, and there was one Rodgers must have been thinking, what the hell is this? They had White and David in a bare front as the pass rushing outside linebackers, and Shaquille Barrett as the off ball guy. That was pretty twisted.
We've talked about it. There were 2 teams this year that gave Rodgers fits and made him confused, and it was Panthers and Buccaneers.
Pressure coverage. It's
Yeah.
new NFL.
Tucker.
Any more thoughts on that game? Because that was kind of your coverage this week. Anything?
No, I mean, look, I think this is in a sense a game. You talk about the matchups that could sort of dictate the game. Can Green Bay have a rebound performance against this defense, or is Vita Vea going to be the sort of X factor that we've talked about? I mean, I think this game is going to be won or lost when Green Bay has the football.
Because this is some on-off splits are like, that doesn't match up with the tape. This matches up with the tape. When Vita Vea is in that front, it's a whole different deal.
Yeah.
And as we said, if the Buccaneers don't have to sacrifice their safety positioning to stop Green Bay's run game, boy,
Yeah.
whole different story. So Bills at Chiefs. Mark, you've been a quarterback. I haven't. Let's say Patrick Mahomes clears the concussion protocol, which we all know he will because the concussion protocol is so incredibly solid. But the toe injury, how does that affect his base, his mechanics, his throwing platform? I don't know which toe it is, like if it's his plant toe or his, pinky toe, as Della Reese said in the Harlem Nights. Now I got to pick. Now I can't pick that up because there's like 14 F-bombs in it, but
right. Yeah, that's not safe for work.
Safe for work.
I mean, it's left foot, so it's a couple of things. It's finishing throws. Now, obviously, look, Mahomes is talented enough with his arm that he doesn't need perfect mechanics to finish throws with velocity, but that's one area.
He's almost better. It's kind of like Stafford, where he's almost better without it.
Yeah.
Like the weirder he gets, the better it is.
I think where it might show up is pocket movement in terms of him evading pressure. Mahomes is weird in that he'll give you a Dan Fouts like 14-step back pedal 8 yards deep.
Mm-hmm.
I actually saw some people putting out the average splits for offensive linemen this year. Somebody had that from PFF, and the widest were the Chiefs, and a lot of people are speculating that's because of the Mahomes drops. You're going to widen and force him to the edges artificially to give him more space to retreat into the pocket, because that's what he does. You might see that hampered. You might see his ability to evade pressure hampered. I know we're going to talk about Leslie Frazier and sort of his thoughts on keeping Mahomes in the pocket. This might keep him in the pocket artificially. Now, is that where you want him to be? I don't know. Is that just something you say because what else you're going to say going up against Kansas City? They're good. But I think those are the areas you'll see it show up. We all know he's going to play. I mean, we all know he's going to play. And Mahomes at 75%.
Let's say, okay, you're Eric Bieniemy. Sorry, you're never going to be a head coach.
Well, apparently.
God, that's
that's a show for next week.
Can I just say bullshit? Actually, bullshit. They didn't really run a different offense at Chad Henne. And Andy Reid, going back to all those guys in Philadelphia that were like borderline backups, and McNabb would get hurt and they'd start 3 games, and Andy knows how to make I don't want to say bad, below average tools quarterbacks look like Joe Montana for about 2 or 3 games.
Yep.
I didn't see any difference in the game plan when Henne went in, which is
no. I mean, it's the sort of Marcia Broda.
They ran sort of the same. I mean, it's a little different with Mahomes because Mahomes can do more, but with Alex Smith, it wasn't like Andy Reid invented spread when Mahomes came in. First of all, Alex Smith played spread at Utah.
Under Urban Meyer.
2004.
Yeah. So, and he was the first overall pick. I mean, and when they drafted Mahomes but sat him for the year, look at what Smith did in that offense.
Yep.
I mean, it was sort of the start of the Andy Reid West Coast on steroids that we're seeing right now. Reid is who he is. He's a guy that's going to run speed option with Patrick Mahomes on 4th and short, and then turn around and put the game in Chad Henne's hands and have him throw the ball on 4th and short. I mean,
you call it the spread coast offense.
I like that. I like that. We all know Mahomes is going to go. I think the biggest thing for me in this game, it's great that we get 2 rematches in these conference championship games. Yeah, which is weird. And the Chiefs and the Bills playing in an AFC championship game for the 27th year yet again, because it was like 27 years ago, and then another 20. It's just weird. We're all living in a simulation. these are two completely different teams than we saw back in week 6.
Yes.
Because that Buffalo team, it was in the midst of a Josh Allen stretch that we can talk about. They had a lot of injuries. And at the start, this Chiefs team back in week 6, that was sort of around the start of this weird sort of set of circumstances where, since blowing out the Jets, I think in week 8 or week 9, every game of theirs, except for the week 17 game where they sat everybody, has been a 1-score game.
Well, I don't want to say Mahomes hasn't played well, but
it's just weird to me because either they're a completely battle-tested team, iron sharpens iron, or they're just ripe for losing.
I will say I would like, and this sounds crazy because of who it is, I would like to see Mahomes work from the pocket more and bail. I think, let's say if his ideal is 2.8 seconds in the pocket, I think he's bailing at about 2.4 or 2.5. I'd like to see him at about 3.
Yeah.
And well, okay, I'll get into this. Bills defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier said this week that the main thing you have to do against Mahomes is keep him in the pocket, because if you let him bail, you're in real trouble. I don't know, that's just, typical press conference bullshit on Frazier's part, but Mahomes barely left the pocket against the Bills in week 6. 4 times, completed 2 passes for 31 yards. From the pocket, he completed 19 of 22 passes for 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, a passer rating of 130.9, and an EPA of 5.7. Is that good?
That's pretty good, Doug.
Pretty good. Both touchdowns were to Travis Kelce. Both saw Kelce exploiting voids in Buffalo's zone coverage. 1 touchdown against Tremaine Edmonds, 1 on Jordan Poyer, where it looked like a coverage bust between Poyer and Tre'Davious White. When guys are pointing at each other while the guys scoring a touchdown, that's never a good sign. And if you think, well, just put a cornerback on Kelce, did you see that move that Kelce put on Denzel Ward in the divisional round game? I think Denzel Ward has to take like a gap year now.
My ankles broke watching that.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So Mahomes in the pocket, and yes, he's a cyborg. 16 touchdowns, no interceptions outside the pocket. Threw all 6 of his interceptions from inside the pocket. But I think in a game like this, for one thing, Buffalo and Cleveland did not. We go back to, well, I'll bring up the numbers here. So yeah, Mahomes is a cyborg outside the pocket. He's just as dangerous inside. The key for the Bills will be to get pressure on Mahomes without blitzing. And this is where the Bills have a real problem. Per Pro Football Reference, they blitz 35.8% of their defensive snaps, 8th highest in the league. They generate pressure on 21% of their defensive snaps, tied for 8th worst with the Panthers and the Browns. Last week, Cleveland managed to pressure Mahomes on 6 of his 31 dropbacks. Is that good? No. Week 6, the Bills pressured Mahomes on 12 of his 34 dropbacks, but Mahomes completed 4 of 6 passes for 64 yards and a touchdown under pressure. If they can't pressure Mahomes with 4, because we've talked about like how do you beat Mahomes, the hypothetical how do you beat Mahomes.
Right.
I think you have to show him a few things. You can't blitz him because that's just death. If you can get pressure with 4, the primary thing, and they have the guys to do this, I think you have to match the middle. Anything that comes as a crosser.
Yeah, you've got to rob those. Of
course, you have to decide, like, do I double one on, because they've got 2 1s. Kelce's a 1 and Hill's a 1. So do I double one on Kelce or do I double one on Hill? And I was listening to Greg Cosell on the Ross Tucker football podcast this morning. He mentioned that probably the hardest formation to defend right now is the 3-by-1 the Chiefs run, where Kelce is the ex-ISO and Tyreek Hill is the inside slot guy. Yeah. And the defensive coordinator is like, oh, F off.
Right. Because, if you're going to double Kelce, if you're going to double Hill as the number 3 to that trip side on the inside, then you're really effed to the backside with that Y ISO, because what are you going to do? Are you going to double both guys and play nobody in the middle of the field? Like, your dream is, if you're going to go Y ISO with Kelce as a defensive coordinator, is to have Hill on the boundary at the 1.
Yeah.
Because then, look, you're forcing the tougher throw, which, again, with Mahomes, he can make all of them in his sleep, but, it at least gives you a fighting chance. But when you've got those 2 guys on the inside, forget it, because then that opens up something that they do often, cross those 2. And now you're picking off. If you're going to double one of those, you get guys running into each other. and it just gives Mahomes some easy throws.
Well, yeah, and I think you have to match the middle. You have to delay Mahomes's crosser looks because the Broncos did that to him his first year as a starter. They played heavy match over the middle. They worked in some cover zero blitzes and they made it work because a lot of times his hots are the crossers.
Yeah.
Here's one thing the Bills don't want to do: don't play too high. They had the most dropbacks of too high of any team in Week 6, tied with the Colts with 18. Both of Mahomes' touchdowns came against too high, and overall he completed 14 of 18 passes for 179 yards. So don't do that. Maybe play some single high. I guess you can try late looks. It's not, whatever.
I think what works in Buffalo's favor is their two safeties.
Yeah.
Because you need.
We can say Hyde and Poyer were great, but the more I studied the AFC teams this week, the more I thought, man, yeah, they're good, but it's where you put them, and it's how you spin them. And you remember Week 1, that the first game of the 2020 season when the Texans came out and said, we're just going to give you too high all day. Remember what Clyde Edwards-Helaire did? And
it can't just be stay too high
because Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, run game coordinator, by the way,
right?
They'll run it up your ass all day. And it could
you've got to spin one of those guys down.
Off this, the guy who delivers UPS, like Andy Reid's sub at lunchtime, could go in there and gain 50 yards. So against too high, because against the Chiefs, you're not playing too high. You're playing too high, like high, all caps.
Right.
So I think we can talk about the safeties and that being a hypothetical advantage. You like the Browns. And the Browns have the worst deep safeties in the league because they have none. I thought they did a pretty nice job of spinning stuff and making it look different to where, Mahomes, honestly, if Sorensen is called for that hit, that
it's a different game.
Hit, well, it's not a different game. We're going to get it. Kansas City has the worst red zone defense in the NFL. You put that ball at the 4 or the 1 or wherever it goes, probably a touchdown. Probably we're talking about Browns Bills.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wrote before Super Bowl 40 or 54 high that Tyron Matthew should have been the defensive player of the year for the 2019 season. Sorry, Stephon Gilmore, love you, but I think Matthew was more valuable. He's played even better this season. 7 interceptions, 2 touchdowns allowed, 64.9% opponent passer rating allowed. And it's the combination of Matthew and L'Jarius Sneed, the rookie cornerback, very dangerous for the Bills. And the reason is Sneed played the first 3 games, then he got a broken clavicle, came back week 11, I believe. When he was outside corner because Breeland was suspended. Then he came back, and he's such a good blitzer, and he's such a good slot corner that said, okay, you're going to be our primary slot guy and our blitzer. And who was that before? It was Tyron Matthew. So now Tyron is the lurk of all lurks. And I put up a piece on Touchdown Wire this morning about how Matthew is the best guesser in the NFL. Richard Sherman was talking about him this week on the Collinsworth podcast with Sherman. And you don't hear this often. Sherman compared him to Ed Reed. Said he guesses so often. And it, of course, the first thing you think of, and I think of, is what? Belichick football life.
Belichick Brady. Yeah.
At the desk.
Well, the second thing I think of is, remember that story that Peyton Manning had?
Yes.
About one of the Reed interceptions where Reed set him up for it. That's just incredible.
Matthew does stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now we can talk about how Josh Allen has improved against zone and improved against late coverage switches. That Kansas City game, 14 of 27 for 122 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, passer rating of 73.4, second worst of the season behind his 65.5 against the Patriots in week 8. So that was that kind of 3 to 4 game stretch. And I think the Dolphins were in there too, where, Flores and Boyer were showing all that diabolical crap they do. 3 or 4 game stretch where, and we this is obviously something we talked about a lot, the 3 parts of the triptych of Josh Allen's season, which was blow man coverage to bits in the first month, zone and late coverage, and his head explodes, and then he sort of gets it back. It was a lot of check down stuff, and he's better with it, but there isn't another guy like Matthew.
No.
And there isn't another slot guy who can LaJoey Sneed has a sack in each of his the three games, the divisional round, and then he didn't play week 17 probably because the Chiefs had it all sewn up. Weeks 15 and 16, sack. Divisional round, sack. And one of the reasons Sneed is so good at getting pressure off the edge is that he's excellent at making it look like, oh, I'm just, I'm covering your nub guy, your guy aligned to the formation, and then he blitzes. But he also, I mean, you should go back and look at the pick he had on Breeze, where he took little Jordan Humphrey and matched him outside and just killed the guy. He reminds me a little bit of Richard Sherman about 2011, where he's just starting to figure it out. But and I'll mention the Chiefs' worst red zone defense in the NFL, 32nd overall in DVOA, 32nd against the pass, 31st against the run, 32nd in goal to go situations. And this is where Josh Allen has an obvious advantage. Bills rank 5th in passing DVOA in the red zone, 25th in rushing, 5th in goal to go. I didn't have because I did NFC the 2 previous weeks. I didn't have time it would take a lot to like go back to, okay, why does their red zone offense just stink? Do you have any thoughts based on what you've seen?
I mean, I think a lot of it is from what I've seen, just stuff gets so compressed down there that the smallest misstep, the smallest mistake is just, you're done as a defense. And so a lot of the like rub switch, traffic creating concepts have given them trouble down there.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it. I think another thing to remember in this game, we've talked about Josh Allen against zone and things like that. And you're right. This was that part of that 4-game stretch, Tennessee, Kansas City, a Jets game. Yeah. A Jets game in New England in week 8, where Allen's numbers were brutal against zone. And I had this from Sports Info Solutions, 50 completions, 78 attempts, 58 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, an NFL passer rated of 69.4 against zone in that 4-game stretch. And that's including a Jets game where he threw for 300 yards. Like, strip that game out, 35 of 42 for 332, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, 67.9 passer rating. But then he had a 4-game stretch late in the year, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, New England, and Denver. 52 of 74, 617 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, NFL passer rated of 107.7.
Now those are all there are no puppies in there. Those are big dogs.
No, those are some pretty good teams. Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind here, Allen missed on some man coverage chances in that game in week 6. Even though they were missing some guys were banged up. He had to throw early in the game. He had Diggs on a corner on a deep crosser.
No one will play, and it's because his offense is going to score 35 points a game or more. He will run cover 0 blitz and just not give a damn.
Yeah. So he had man coverage opportunities. He just missed on them. Yeah. He hits on 2 or 3 of those. Again, we're talking about a different game back in week 6. And this is part of the reason why I think you and I are in agreement that these are 2 completely different teams right now, particularly on Buffalo's side, because they've gotten better on the offensive side of the ball. And this was one of Tre'Davious White's first games back from when he was dealing with some injuries. That's also critical.
When he got healthy, that whole defense changed. But I'll tell you another guy who's made a big difference. I think you know who I'm going to say.
Probably.
Tyron Johnson.
Yes.
I'm going to go with, 5 DBs. I want to get a sense of. My sense is the Bills run a crap ton of nickel.
I would bet on that.
269 passing attempts. Tyron Johnson has become that guy. Had the long pick 6 against Lamar Jackson where he just jumped into the window. And if you jump into the window against Lamar, you can get away with it because, sorry, Lamar.
Yeah.
Oh, yikes. So I'm watching Patrick Mahomes interceptions, and there was one in week 16 against the Falcons. And it was linebacker Foyesade Olakun. I almost got it.
Almost.
I was looking at the pronunciation guide. Really an underrated player. And he did something that I've rarely seen a linebacker do. And it was, I tweeted about it. I said, cool little nuance here. This is the Olakun pick where Tyreek Hill chased him down and prevented a pick 6. So keep pick 6 in your mind because we're going to come back to that. Watch how he looks Mahomes off pre-snaps as quarterback will look a safety off. He's looking over to the trip side, like, oh, there are only two guys over there. So Mahomes sees that and he thinks he's got Kelsey wide ass open on the slant. Well, you look at the Tyron Johnson pick 6 against Lamar. Tyron Johnson is playing off, and Mark Andrews has his sit route. And because Johnson's playing off, Jackson thinks he's got Andrews wide ass open on the sit route. It's not the same route, but it's kind of the same spacing. Yeah. You can fool Patrick Mahomes into interceptions with late movement. And the Bills are really good at this. Tyron Johnson has 2 pick 6s this year, one against the Ravens in the playoffs, one against the Steelers, where each time he made it look like one thing, jumped it late. And Mahomes is a little bit susceptible to that.
Yeah, and both those interceptions.
Quarterbacks are.
Yeah, I mean, most quarterbacks are. And both of these interceptions, the Falcons won and then the Tyron Johnson one, it's an example of a quarterback making that assumption of what he's getting backside before confirming it and just letting it fly. If you can change that picture when you're not in the field of vision as a defense, you're going to have success. And this is something I think to watch, because if Buffalo can get a turnover or 2 in this game, I really like their chances. I like their chances anyway.
Oh, yeah.
I think if we're going to see one of these 2 road team wins, I'm putting my money on Buffalo. But if they can force a mistake from Mahomes, 2 mistakes from Mahomes, I really feel good about where they'll be.
I think, well, we'll see where Vita Vea is, but the way the Packers are controlling defenses with the run game and the big play passing game based off the run game, and the way LaFleur is dialing it up. I mean, God, talk about student becomes a teacher. He might be a better game player than Kyle Shanahan right now. He's just, this is Mozart the way it should be played. I think the Buccaneers probably fall a little bit short. I think it's gonna be a lot closer than that week 6. Because I think Rodgers will call a lot more of the protections. They'll still have their deep shots. I think, you'll see a pretty similar plan from Tampa Bay. I just get the feeling that Green Bay is going. I think KC is going. What I think is going to happen is Spagnuolo is still going to have a plan to have Josh Allen's head explode with late movement, late switches. I can't overemphasize how important it is that Tyrann Mathieu became the lurk defender when L'Jarius Sneed returned and got out of the slot. And now you saw that pick against Mayfield where he's just waiting. And the whole time he's just like, yeah, bring it.
Yeah.
He had 2 picks against Drew Lock. He had a pick against Derek Carr last year. And he does this a lot. He was running, he was controlling the post, and halfway through the post, he knew that wasn't the play. It was the out to Darren Waller. He's going up, and here's Waller, and he's like going the post to, I don't remember the receiver. And as he's going past Waller, he moves to control Waller. I mean, this is just, when Richard Sherman compares him to Ed Reed, my ears perk up.
Right. I mean, my only.
I've heard Sherman tell a story that when the Niners offensive players were preparing for Super Bowl 54, the one guy they couldn't game plan for was Matthew, because they were like, we don't know what he's doing.
Right.
He doesn't have a tendency. I think that's going to be one of the differences, maybe the primary difference. Look, Josh Allen is, potential MVP candidate. He's come so far. Man, I think you have to be just on a slightly more elevated level as far as how you read and where you go against Matthew specifically.
Yeah,
it's not a great pass defense, but it would be like horrible without him.
I mean, my only thought there, and that's all right. Allen has gotten better at using his eyes as a quarterback.
Oh, sure.
And I do think that there are going to be some opportunities where he could bait Matthew just a little bit, and it might just take one play. Matthew might get some plays. He might get some breakups. He might get a turnover. But with that jalapeno, you've talked about this. They love to run a double post in the over. Yeah. If he can move him to one of those guys throw the other one, as he's shown the ability to do this year. That might deliver a big play for Buffalo. I think I'm a little bit more bullish on the Buffalo's chances than you are. Just because I do think,
I mean, just from an aesthetic sense, being an AFL guy, AFL historian, I would love Packers Chiefs Super Bowl one redo.
yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I'm letting my heart guide my head. I don't know.
No, I mean,
I think the Chiefs are favored by 3 at home. It's a push, and I think it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, this is the AFC Championship game everybody wanted. In a sense, I think we got the 2 games that people wanted. People wanted Brady Breeze. People wanted Bills Chiefs. We got them. It should be 2 fantastic games.
Brady Rodgers.
Brady Rodgers. Yeah. I think we're going to get 2 very close games. I expect 2 very good games. And I really don't see like a bad Super Bowl that could emerge from this. Any of the potential matchups that we would get in Tampa will have incredible storylines. So I think we're in for a fantastic afternoon of football.
Yep. The only thing about this Super Bowl, first one I won't have been to since 46.
Yeah, that part stings.
Sucks. Anyway.
Yeah.
First world problems, I'm aware.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining. I'm just whining.
We can whine. Whining's okay.
All right, man. Any other thoughts?
No. I mean, as usual, we will have this covered all weekend long into next week.
We have what is it? 9 pieces? 9 pieces?
Yeah. 9. That's been a big number for this show. And look, next week you will get Monday morning Senior Bowl watch pieces from myself.
That's right.
It's Senior Bowl week. Something else we're not getting to do. Although my credit card will be happy because I won't be running up a bar tab at Veets, which is good.
Bar tab at Veets.
Virtual.
Is the bird pit gone, by the way?
No, it's still there.
Okay. That's the best barbecue ever. So how many times we read all 22 pieces this week?
9 times. 9 times.
That's how many times.
That's how many times. Yeah, no saucy cues. My cardiologist will also be happy.
Saucy Q is like an 8. Brick Pit is a 10.
See, I'm very partial to saucies. I always thought about trying to find a way to order some via like Postmates or something just to replicate it. Can't quite figure that out. But anyway, look, Senior Bowl next week too. The fun never stops.
Yep. Remember, was it? Was that MASH episode where I think Hawkeye got the ribs from Adam's ribs? Yeah.
Yeah.
So do that.
Something like that.
Yeah, do that. All right, man. Good stuff. Always more to come on TD Wire, Super Bowl, Senior Bowl. We just keep rolling.
Keep rolling.
We'll talk again on Monday.
Yep.
With the
teaser
with the game forensics. All right, man. Take care, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.